CXB 2.0. I am back. Fresh week, Monday. We got Lee Wood coming up this week. And as during this weekend against Lara, and as the week goes by, later on the week, we'll start to talk about next weekend's fights. Have a quick recap on some fights this past weekend. First of all, hit that sub button, hit the like button, hit the alerts, all that good stuff. Y'all know the deal. Y'all know what to do. And introduce yourself as you come in. Team Batman Boxing. I appreciate you coming through. My guy, OJ22, appreciate you coming through. I appreciate everybody who tunes in, introduces themselves, also gets involved in the chat. So make sure you're leaving your comments in the chat. And if you want to talk about something, let's talk about it. How'd that shrimp taste yesterday? That wasn't shrimp. Crawfish, oysters, crawfish and oysters. We love that down here. Every time you have the Super Bowl, you got to have the seafood popping down here in New Orleans. So was definitely enjoying the crawfish and the oysters. My guy, Two Matador, coming through as well. And I appreciate everybody that's supporting. And if you're watching this in the archives, make sure to leave those comments below. We're approaching a record-breaking 28 days, last 28 days on this channel. So I definitely appreciate all the support I've been getting over here. And make sure to tune in tonight, D-Style Boxing's channel. 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. If you're on the West Coast, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., no matter who, depending on where you are. So make sure to check out HCP tonight on D-Style's channel. I will be there with them at 7 p.m. Central. Chicano Prophet is over here. Appreciate you swinging through as always, my guy, Chicano Prophet. Rate Rihanna's performance. I'll give her a solid. She should have stayed her ass at home. Hey, like, she had a good performance for like, she's pregnant or something, right? So I don't know. I was tossing the football around outside during her performance. I didn't see much of it, but people seem to like it. I don't really care, to be honest. Great game, by the way. Great game. But as far as boxing, I want people to be aware of one thing, and I'll touch on it as the show goes on. People need to be aware of one thing. People will tell you how they feel about a fighter by their expectations of said fighter, right? So when Jamal Charlo takes a 605-day, I think we're at like 607 days right now at this point, something like that. People don't really bat an eye. People don't really look for him, to be honest. And he gets to keep his belt, et cetera, et cetera. So what's going to happen? He's going to fight in late June. He announces on Instagram. The expectations coming in is that he's going to come back in a tune-up fight, right? Like a fight. That's the worst part of the inactivity thing. The inactivity scourge, the pandemic of inactivity in boxing is when these guys leave for a while. All right? The expectations are almost that, oh, he's got to have a tune-up fight because he's been gone for a while. Look at a guy like Canelo in comparison. Contrast him with that. When Canelo has a surgery, when Canelo fights 6 times between like now and December 2020, and he's outpacing his peers, the expectation is Canelo's going to hit you with a home run every single fight out, right? And the expectations are there for a reason. The expectations are, he set those expectations, and even Canelo's detractors are expecting him to do great things because that's what they've come to expect of him. With Charlo, he's not expected to do great things because they just don't have high expectations of a guy like Charlo. They don't have high expectations of a guy like Boo Boo Andre. Right? So when John Ryder is announced as the opponent, and I'll speak on this several times during this podcast, so bear with me. When John Ryder is announced as the opponent, what's the typical response? The response is, oh, Euro bum. He's from Europe, so he's automatically a Euro bum. But it shows the laziness, right? It shows the laziness of many in the boxing public, even journalists, pundits, the laziness that they don't pay attention to a lot of things that go on outside of the American borders. John Ryder, if you look at his resume, he's the only super middleweight who had 2 top 10 super middleweight wins in 2022. The only one. The only one. Beats Danny Jacobs, beat Zach Parker, And we talk about expectations, right? The expectations for Boo Boo Andre, there aren't any. Because he hasn't set a standard in which we go out of our way to look for Boo Boo Andre, because he's simply not doing anything. Right? So our expectations are Boo Boo Andre is just going to let us down, fight in and fight out. So whatever. We just won't check for him. It doesn't really matter. But then you'll have the Canelo detractors will use fighters like Boo Boo Andre, Jamal Charlo, David Benavidez. They'll use those fighters to try to use them against Canelo. They're not fans of these fighters. They're simply not. There's not Boo Boo Andre fans out there like talking about, and the same thing with Jamal Charlo. They're just not. They use those guys against Canelo to constantly move the goalposts, right? Well, he should have fought Charlo. He should have fought Benavidez. He should have fought. And you can try to explain to him till you're blue in the face that he didn't fight Benavidez. Why? Because Benavidez lost his belt on the scale. Benavidez couldn't keep his nose clean. And had he done those things, he would have had the $10 million golden ticket that Caleb Plant ended up with. You can try to explain to him that Yildirim was the mandatory for Benavidez before Yildirim was the mandatory for Canelo. You can try to explain this stuff to them, but they're not going to listen. They're not going to care because their expectations of Canelo are so high, even if they're the detractor, that they're expecting him to do great things. So when a John Ryder comes around, by the way, a guy who is ranked as a number 3 contender by Ring Magazine. Number 3. Who is he behind? David Benavidez, Caleb Plant. Already fought Caleb Plant. And by the way, Benavidez and Caleb Plant are fighting each other in March. Good. That's progress. Good. That's what we want. So the next guy is who? John Ryder. The only guy who is doing anything really at super middleweight in 2022. The only guy who beat 2 top 10 super middleweights in 2022, same calendar year. John Ryder. On top of that, we spoke about Boo Boo Andre. What was Boo Boo Andre doing in 2022? What did he do? He didn't fight. But what was he busy doing? He was busy avoiding other fighters. He was busy avoiding Janibek initially to fight Zach Parker. So what happens? He pulls out of the Zach Parker fight last minute, citing an injury. And then what happens again? Janibek is ordered, doesn't fight him. Zach Parker comes to the table, doesn't fight him. So he openly avoids, we're not going to use the quack word, openly avoids Zach Parker twice in 2022. Not once, but twice. Had he got that win, a top 10 win at super middleweight, once again, he would have positioned himself well for a Canelo super fight as opposed to his peers. So the people out there saying he should be fighting a guy like Boo Boo Andre against Zach Parker. What did Zach Parker do in 2022? He beats Danny Jacobs. He sees Canelo lose to Bivol and talk about a surgery after the Golovkin fight. So he gets busy. He says, look, Zach, you can't get the Boo Boo Andre fight. I can't get the Canelo fight right now because he's going to have surgery. So let's just fight each other. We can't get the fights we want, so let's just fight each other. Crazy how that works, right? It's just crazy. So what happens? John Ryder beat Zach Parker, and now he positions himself into the Canelo fight. And that was the plan initially, right? Even before John Ryder beat Zach Parker, the 3-fight plan was we're going to fight Bivol, we're going to fight Golovkin, and possibly fight John Ryder on the third end of that in December. It just gets pushed back 5 months. But what John Ryder did was he got active and he made sure I'm getting this shot. I'm going to make sure I get this shot. I'm going to go fight Zach Parker. This is a guy who was ducked twice. I shouldn't use that word ducked because I know people get in their feelings, but he was avoided twice openly by Boo Boo Andre. And then I'm supposed to be over here and play the small violin for Boo Boo Andre for not getting a fight with Canelo when John Ryder is beating Boo Boo Andre to the punch by beating 2 top 10 super middleweights while Boo Boo Andre is laid up. And the only thing he's actively doing is avoiding fights with other top middleweights and super middleweights. Expectations, right? Expectations. The Don in the building. Appreciate you coming through. Only Canelo can get hate for coming back off an injury, fighting a top 10 super middleweight, yet these dudes get passes to Andre and Charlo. I don't get it, man. And it's what I just told you. It's the expect. They just simply don't expect great things from their favorite fighters. And some of their favorite fighters are just their favorite fighters because they're anti-whoever. They're anti-Canelo. Charlo's anti-Canelo. They can use Charlo as an angle to detract what Canelo's doing. But it's getting more difficult for them to do that. And I think that's why they're getting more ornery. I think that's why they're getting more in their feelings. I think that's why they're getting more frustrated. Is as Canelo is simply conducting his business, what's Charlo doing? Nothing. By the time he fights at the end of June, he'll be over 700 days inactive. So it's tougher to use that guy as a pawn in your war against Canelo when he's simply not doing anything. It's more difficult to use Benavidez as a pawn in your war against Canelo when he loses the belt on the scale, can't keep his nose clean. It's going to become easier for you to do that if he beats Caleb Plant in March, because at that point, that's a fight that all of us are demanding. If Benavidez beats Plant and he does it impressively, we'll all be calling for that fight at that point. The boxing fan, what we want will align with what Canelo needs to do at that point. It's impossible for them to use Boo Boo Andre as a pawn against Canelo when he doesn't fight Zach Parker twice in 2022, and then John Ryder fights him, and then Canelo fights John Ryder. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? It's a top 5 win at super middleweight if he wins that fight. It's a top 5 win. John Ryder is the best win on Boo Boo Andre's resume if Boo Boo Andre beats him last year. It's the best win on his resume. For Canelo, is that top 10? No, and that's what I talk about, expectations. That's not even a top 10 win for Canelo, a John Ryder win. It's a good win, a top 5 win at super middleweight. But it's not even a top 10 win on his resume for Boo Boo Andre, a John Ryder win, beating a guy who's ranked number 3 contender by Ring Magazine or number 6 overall by badlefthook.com. It depends on where you look at. He can be somewhere between 4 and 6 in the rankings. That's a top win on Boo Boo Andre's resume, number 1. Same with David Benavidez. What did David Benavidez do in 2022? He beats Lemieux, who's 80 years old. And this is what I'm saying, expectations of these fighters. You're expecting less of those fighters because you see those fighters as lesser than Canelo. And we've sniffed that out. It's becoming more difficult for you to use these fighters in your war campaign against Canelo when they're simply not producing. Benavidez is going to have his shot. Caleb Plant's going to have his shot to try to get revenge against Canelo, but he's got to go through Benavidez first. But John Ryder has done more at super middleweight than any other guy, if we're being honest, as far as accomplishments in 2022 to earn the Canelo shot. I mean, people can say what they want about that. It's the truth. It's telling you that the sky is blue. It's the truth. It's obvious. And on top of that, the fact that, look, we can talk about him coming off of surgery, and we can also talk about American fighters. They want all kind of credit for leaving American borders to go fight. And as we get more big fights outside of American borders, it's tougher to give them that credit because those are where the fights belong. So when a Canelo Alvarez, who has come to America and constantly fought outside of his home country, and I'm not acting like he's going to the moon because Mexico is right there, right? But he's constantly coming to America to fight for 12 straight years, and he wants a homecoming fight. He wants a homecoming fight coming off of surgery and against the top 4 to 6 guy in the weight class. And I'm supposed to sit here and knock that, especially when I know it's what we talk about, like guys building up equity, right? Guys showing you over time, you have a trust for certain fighters that they're going to deliver on certain things. So when a lot of guys fight and they fight, I don't know what they're going to do after that. I don't know if we're going to see that guy again for a year. I don't know. Are we going to see him the next 9 to 12 months? I don't know. But with Canelo, I already know that the plan is B-Vol in September. So he's going to fight a top 4 to 6 guy at middleweight in front of 46,000 plus in Mexico. Homecoming fight, make a ton of money. And after that, he's going to fight a top 5 to 10 pound for pound fighter. Statistically, the best defensive fighter in the world. Statistically, the most versatile fighter in the world in September, just 4 months later. And I'm supposed to sit here. They want me to sit here and call John Ryder a bum. They want me to sit here and be depressed. They want me to come out here and say, oh, and this is what they don't understand, right? They want me to sit here and say, oh, man, I shouldn't have been a fan of Canelo. I shouldn't have. He let me down. He's so disappointing. He's going to fight this Euro bum. And at the same time, and this is the beautiful part about it, they do the same thing with it. And they did it to Bud Crawford. They'll sit here, the pundits, the journalists, new media especially, and tell you that the welterweight division is the strongest division in boxing. Look how talented it is from top to bottom. And then Bud Crawford goes over there because he's sick of sitting around and waiting for a real contract to fall in his lap, not a poison pill one, a real one. And he says, I'm going to go over here and fight David Evanesian. I'm going to have the $10 million hit my bank account before the fight even happens. And I'm going to fight the number 8 or number 9 guy in David Evanesian in the division, in a strong division, right? But these dudes will tell you, welterweight, in the same breath, they'll tell you welterweight is a great division. And then they'll tell you in the very next sentence, Evanesian is a Euro bum. And then you'll point to them and you'll say, look at every single rankings by the big publications. They either have Evanesian 8 or 9. Doesn't matter. He's still a Euro bum. You can't win. You can't win. You can point out this dude is the number 3 contender to Canelo's crown. Number 1 and number 2 are fighting each other in March. You can point that out. They'll tell you super middleweight is a great division. All of a sudden, super middleweight's a great division. All of a sudden, it's weird. It's weird how that happened because a year or two ago, it was Euro bum city. Super middleweight's not that great. Now it's a great division because things change, right? So they'll tell you super middleweight's a great division, but the number 3 contender, according to Ring Magazine, number 6 overall by badlefthook.com is a Euro bum. We just can't win. It's the constant moving of the goalposts. Mario Barrios looked okay. He won't be a world beater, but will always give his best and give everyone a decent fight. I thought Mario Barrios looked good and strong at 147, but considered the opposition is what I would say. So I don't see Mario Barrios really fitting in top 10 at welterweight. I just don't. But that's just me. But he's one of those guys, though, like you got to be careful how you market these guys. Before and after the Tank fight, and that's part of the Tank Davis theorem, they marketed Mario Barrios as this great fighter, right? This champion, even though he's a Reggie champion. He's not a real champion at 140 at the time. They'll market him as that type of guy when they should be marketing him as just a good fighter who's exciting. And we could put him in his hometown in San Antonio, night in and night out, right? And even if he loses the fight, we still come back to watch him fight. And that's what we should have with Mario Barrios, even if he doesn't land in the top 10 welterweight, because nobody's calling Mario Barrios is moving up to welterweight, a top 10 welterweight, which is not. But what I'm saying is it shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be marketing him that way. He's a fun fighter. He's hittable. He's got decent boxing skill. He'll walk you down. You see, he's physical. Like he's a physical fighter. Nice build, nice frame, and he wants to get guys out of there. He's going to be in fun fights. That's how we should market him. Give me 1 second. I got to open this vent because it's making noises. My bad. I had the office vent closed from the heater. But that's how we should be marketing Matteo Barrios anyway. Exciting fighter, fun fighter. Win or lose, we'll come back to watch him fight. He could have a nice built-in fan base in San Antonio or Houston, wherever, and he'll bring out a crowd, even though the crowd looked pretty sparse in San Antonio. It's the rule for Canelo and the only rule apparently for everyone else in terms of what expected opponent-wise. That's what I'm saying. They'll tell you how they feel about fighters' expectations, so just pay attention to that. Just pay attention to that. Even like the detractors of Floyd Mayweather, right? And I would consider myself both a fan of Floyd and a detractor at the same time, and I would get it from both sides, particularly from the pro-Floyd side when Floyd was in his run at welterweight during the whole Pacquiao debacle, right? So what happened during that point? We would say stuff like, you know, yeah, I get it. Like, I get that Robert Guerrero will be a good win on a lot of welterweights resume, but you're Floyd. And there are other guys for you there as Floyd that would look better for you, Robert Guerrero, than a Marcos Maidana who was just fresh off of a Devin Alexander loss like a year or two before. We'd see like an Andre Berto fight. We'd see these fights come out for Floyd, and we're like, it's a good fight. Like, it's a good win on other people's resume, but you're Floyd. You're Floyd. And as a detractor, you're honest with yourself. Like, I'm expecting more of Floyd because Floyd is up here. I'm a Cotto fan. I'm Cotto-tarded, but I understood Floyd's here, Cotto's lower as far as talent level. Doesn't mean I like Floyd more. I like Cotto more, but I'm honest with myself. I'm honest with the audience. Floyd's a better fighter than Cotto. Cotto could win some of the fights that Floyd won. I could see Floyd win that fight and say, I'd see Cotto win that fight. And I was like, he did more with the talent that he has. It's a better win for Cotto, that guy, because Floyd is a better fighter. And Floyd should have been in there with someone better and higher. He should have been testing himself a little more. And that's what these guys do with Canelo right now, but they're not being honest about why they're doing it, is the point. They're not being honest and saying that's the best win on David Benavidez's resume if he beats John Ryder right now. But for Canelo, it's expectations. They'll tell you how they feel about fighters by their expectations of those fighters. And for us, this fight aligns with what we want as fans because, like I said, he's the number 3 contender at 168. Number 1 and number 2 are busy with each other. What do you want him to do? Boo Boo fumbled the Parker fight. Exactly. You're not fans of Boo Boo Andre. You're pretending to be because he's a pawn in the anti-Canelo war. So when Boo Boo lets you down in 2022 by, let's just call it what it is. Let's be honest. It's a duck. He ducked Zach Parker twice. He ducked Janabek twice. It's a duck because when you go elsewhere, and we'll talk about this with Teofimo and why Teofimo not fighting Regis Prograis is not a duck, in my opinion, at this point in time. We may have thought it was a week or two ago, but things change, and it's changing because it looks like Teofimo is going to fight Josh Taylor across the pond. So we can no longer call Teofimo not fighting Regis Prograis a duck. And why? Because you could argue that the Josh Taylor fight is tougher, and he's going over there. That's a big boy move, right? In Boo Boo Andre's case, your expectations of him are so low that you're still calling for a Canelo fight when this guy has simply done nothing. All he was busy doing in 2022 is ducking Euro bums. Euro bums getting beat by another Euro bum. And the slick American fighter wouldn't fight him. Tries to steal a Eubank Jr. fight from Matchroom. That he did as well. The sentiment down with the Super Bowl commercials, always winning. Let the haters hate. And he still got the Super Bowl commercials. He's still saying in people's faces. And how did he do that? How did he build that up? He built an organic fan base, staying busy, fighting tough fights. We've been through this over and over. And he turned down Janibek and he gave up his belt. That he did. Boo Boo Andre. That he did. When Boo Boo Andre doesn't fight those fighters and then he fights the guy that he fought in January, that's what we call a duck. Let's just call it what it is. You avoided bigger fights for a smaller fight. You avoided tougher fights for an easier fight that didn't make any business sense. It didn't make any legacy sense and it didn't make any business sense. That's a duck. These dudes move the whole field when it comes to their favorite fighters not fighting in general. Great point, Remy. Ryder fought and beat the guy Andre was supposed to fight. Ryder fought Zach Parker, who was avoided by Boo Boo Andre. Boo Boo Andre once again gives up position to someone else who moves to the front of the line ahead of him because he did something that you were either afraid to do or not willing to do, didn't want to do. Whatever it is, it's still a duck. It's a duck. And now you go to the back of the line. And we can't throw Jamal Charlo's name out there because the dude is sitting on 605 days inactive, somehow still with his belt. And I'm sure when he comes late June, he'll announce a get back right fight, a tune-up fight. And in doing so, I'm sure the boxing public will say, oh, it's fine. He's been inactive so long. I mean, let's just give him one. Let's just give him one. Once again, we talk about expectations. That's our expectations of Jamal Charlo at this point. It's just like, whatever. Okay, whatever. Because we're not really looking for the dude at this point. The logic of the Canelo detractors, oh, Tank, Errol are bigger stars than Canelo. Who came out in the Super Bowl commercial? I didn't see the Super Bowl commercial. I don't know much about the Super Bowl. I think it was a Michelob Ultra commercial. But the ultimate point is this. Those guys aren't bigger stars than Canelo, first of all. But the ultimate point is, like, your expectations are higher of Canelo. Just be honest about that. Just be honest. Salute D Nice. It's crazy the level of differences in the expectations of these guys. Yeah. Tired of the racial narrative to say Eurobums is getting another and disrespectful was saying about them and be labeled a racist, the low IQ double standards. Good point, Remy. Good point. If Ryder is a bum, what the F is Andre? That's what I'm asking. Like, how is Boo Boo Andre this great, slick, avoided fighters when he's busy? The only thing he's busy doing in 2022 is avoiding other fighters that are at the top of the weight class. And then you're going to call the guy that he's avoiding and refuse to fight. You're calling the guy who he refused to fight a bum. And then you're calling the guy who beat that guy a bum. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. John Ryder beat Zach Parker. John Ryder is the only super middleweight in the world with 2 top 10 super middleweight wins in 2022. He's got momentum. He's got leverage. He's going out there and accomplishing things. He's doing things. Explain it to me. Like, explain what I'm missing. I'm glad Ray Vargas lost. Hopefully he'll disappear for a long time. His style sucks. I don't know how he beat Magsayo. He did beat Magsayo. And the thing about Vargas, and I'll talk about this a lot on D-Style's channel tonight. I'm trying to save my thoughts for the most part. But Vargas, he was successful at 122 and 126. He's a good fighter, undefeated. He's fighting good competition. But the main reasons he was successful is the big part is his size, tall for the weight, and he's awkward, right? He's an awkward fighter. And those attributes aren't going to serve him as well for 130. They're just not. Like, the size isn't going to be as much of a difference. And you saw that against Oshakwe Foster. O'Shaquie Foster had no issues with his length, with his size. He was able to deal with it defensively, but also step on his front foot and back Ray Vargas up during the fight. And as rounds went on, right? Like Ray Vargas' size and his awkward style usually wears guys down as the fight goes on, and that didn't happen with O'Shaquie Foster. Part of that is weight. 130 is going to be an issue for Ray Vargas if he sticks around. But Ray Vargas has owned championship rounds throughout his career. He didn't in this fight. The last 3 rounds were owned by O'Shaquie Foster. He stepped on the gas. He backed him up. He won the championship rounds. He cemented that win. And it's a good win for O'Shaquie Foster. And O'Shaquie Foster is one of the good guys stories in boxing. What did he do? As Chris Colbert and guys like that get a lot of the attention at 130 for being loud, for being flashy, and then fall flat against a guy like Hector Luis Garcia. What does O'Shaquie Foster do? He has some early losses. He's not a marketable guy. They're not marketing him early on in his career, but what does he do? He puts his head down, stays disciplined, and goes 7 straight years undefeated and waits for his title shot. I love fighters like that. And then what's he do when he gets his title shot? He capitalizes. As the fight goes on, he's fighting better, wins the championship rounds, and now he's the champion. Good for him. They should feed Barrios to Boots. It's a possibility. I don't know. Barrios is probably one of those expendable guys, so that could be a fight, because the issue that Boots has, and I listened to a Richards and Hitchens interview over the weekend. And Richards and Hitchens is talking about, I just couldn't get the dates at Mayweather Promotions. They deal with Showtime. PBC deals with Showtime. So what happens? The PBC fighters are getting the dates. They're getting first dibs on the dates. I'm sitting here. I can't get any dates. I'm sitting on the shelf in my prime. I'm just not getting dates. So I said, release me. Let me go to Matchroom. Matchroom guarantees Richards and Hitchens 3 dates per year. He's going to fight 3 times on the zone per year. And that was the biggest thing to him, is activity. And that's the biggest issue in boxing. One of the biggest issues in boxing right now is these fighters are getting locked into contracts with promoters who are locked into contracts with networks. So they're sitting there when the networks don't have the dates, and they sit on the shelf. It's what happened to Boots in 2022. Boots is just sitting on the shelf. He's not a PBC fighter. The Showtime well dries up as the year goes on. There are no dates available in that last quarter for the most part. And Boots is just sitting there on the shelf. Not fighting in his prime. He's 6 years in. He's 25 years old. He's not fighting on the top of cards. And this is supposed to be one of the best pound for pound fighters we've seen in a long time, people are telling me. And nobody's seen this guy fight. But I bring it up because Mario Barrios is expendable to a guy like Boots, because this is the other issue that Boots has, is Al is not going to feed his fighters to Boots. Boots is not PBC. He's not. People get this confused. Boots is not a PBC fighter. He fights on Showtime. He fights on PBC cards, but he's fighting on the undercards because he's not a PBC fighter. And he's not getting the big fights with PBC fighters in the division because Al is not going to feed his fighters to Boots. He's not. Unless you're a guy like Mario Barrios, who may be expendable. But the top guys, no. Al's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. I think Canelo will be very motivated to put on a show in Mexico. I expect Canelo to look extremely sharp. As do I. Let's see. The Mexican Monster. All we're asking over here as fans is show us something. Like, show us stuff. And we're starting to hear rumblings, more and more rumblings of fighters who are getting aggravated with contracts, fighters of being frustrated of not getting dates, fighters being frustrated in some cases even of not getting money on time. Deontay Wilder. I don't know if y'all caught that story, but Deontay Wilder apparently, and I have it on good information that this story is true, by the way. By the way, for the people out there going after Coppinger, I have it on good information that this story is true, that there is some friction between Deontay Wilder and PBC in the back channel. So going on behind the scenes. So when you start to hear more things like that, you start to get hope that this reset that we talk about, we keep talking about this reset that could possibly happen, right? Where networks look at this and they say, okay, CBS no longer in the business, NBC no longer in the business, Fox no longer in the business, HBO no longer in the business, Showtime possibly going to be no longer in the business. What are they doing wrong? What are all those networks doing wrong? They all have a common denominator. What is it? They're all dealing exclusively with one outfit, with one promotional agency for the most part. DAZN will deal with Golden Boy too, but they all have exclusive contracts with networks. Who's going to be the network? What's going to be the first network to step up and say, no. Network, app, whoever it may be, say, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to do this anymore. What are we going to do? Bring me your best cards. I'm going to deal with everyone. No more exclusive contracts. I'm not just going to deal with Showtime. I'm not just going to deal with PBC. I'm not just going to deal with Trust Fund Eddie. I'm not just going to deal with Bob. I'm not just going to deal with Oscar. Everybody, including Probellum, anybody, bring me your deals. Bring me your best cards. Compete. Competition. Competition brings out the best of everybody, and competition is what gives fans what we want. When we have multiple promotional companies and outfits, advisors saying, you know what? To compete with this other promoter, to get on this network, I got to put on a good card. I can't just roll Sebastian Fundora out here against anybody and not even promote the fight and have it in a half-empty tennis court. I can't do that anymore. I can't get away with it. We got to compete now. We got to actually promote. We got to actually put on good cards that people want to see. I want these networks to wake up and say, what did all these other networks do wrong? What did they all do wrong? What did HBO do wrong? That was part of their demise at the end of the day. What did NBC do wrong? CBS? Why did the network boxing, free boxing for all experiment not work? It didn't work. Why? Because you got crappy fights. You had crappy cards. Let's keep it real. I had dudes a decade ago telling me on YouTube, all we have to do, don't worry about any of that stuff. All we have to do is get boxing back on network TV and it'll be good again. Go back to the old days. And we put boxing back on network TV, and then you had a mass exodus of American boxing fans. And people can't put two and two together as to why this is happening. This same dude is burning through every single relationship that he has. He worked with CBS. He worked with NBC. He worked with Fox. Now he's left with Showtime, and that looks to be dwindling. And people don't do that math in their head that there's one common denominator here. If there's a chick and she's, I brought this analogy up, like if there's a girl and she's 30 and she wants to be married, she's like 30 years old. She wants badly to be married. She's a dime piece. Dudes want to be with her. And then she's 30 and she's not married. And she goes through all of these relationships and they all fail. At some point, she's got to look in the mirror and say, you know, it's me. Maybe it's me here. And the PBC hardcore fans and these dudes come after me all the time, particularly on Twitter. They can't do the math in their head. They refuse to. They don't want to. Particularly LDBC here in the YTBC, because they were the ones touting that Al Heyman was going to be the savior of boxing. So they can't. And this is why, watch out for this. Watch out for this story. Just watch it the next couple months. Al Heyman versus Deontay Wilder. They're not going to know how to handle this. They're not going to know what to do with this, because there's going to come a point when they have to throw Al Heyman under the bus. That point is going to have to come for the LDBC. It's going to happen. There's going to come that point when they have to throw Al Heyman under the bus. They have to. When their favorite fighters start outwardly complaining or just leaving Al, and they're like, wait, what's going on? What's going on? You know what's going on. You just don't want to bring yourself to that. You don't want to lose the audience that you have because you fear that you coming to that realization and then outwardly saying it and then throwing Al Heyman under the bus, you think you're going to lose that audience. That's what it is. But there's going to come a point in time when they have to, mark my words on this, they have to throw Al Heyman under the bus. They see their favorite fighters not getting the dates. They see their favorite fighters not getting the fights that they want. They see their favorite fighters, as a result, by extension, not building up legacy, not sharpening their sword and looking dull against inferior opposition because they're not being tested. And they can't do that math in their head yet as to why that's happening, or they don't want to. But as we hear more stories of Deontay Wilder being frustrated with the PBC, et cetera, more fighters saying, look, please release me of my contract. Please, I want dates. I'm getting frustrated with not getting dates. As we hear more of that and see more of that, there's going to come that day when they got to throw Al under the bus. But the Al versus Deontay Wilder, this is going to be a tough one for them to navigate. I'm just going to leave you with that. Like that's going to be a tough one for them to navigate. Really tough. Really tough. If this plays out the way I think it's going to play out, it's going to be really tough for them to navigate that. How will fight negotiations go if Canelo does fight Benavidez knowing how the PBC is doing? See, this is why I love my chat. This is why I love my chat. Because they give me the perfect segue. And this is a highly intelligent chat. How will fight negotiations go if Canelo does fight Benavidez knowing how the PBC is doing? So rewind to last year around, what are we in February? Around the same time. When Canelo was around the same time, Canelo took the Matchroom Trust Fund Eddie deal instead of the 3-fight deal by PBC. And you start to wonder, like, anybody who knows boxing is looking at that and like, man, that's the PBC deal. It's around the same amount of money, but it's an easier deal. It's an easier deal. Like, that's an easier 3-fight plan to navigate than Bivol on the front end. And then that was a litmus test, right? That was another litmus test in boxing, because we talk about litmus tests to see how intelligent certain fight fans are and pundits are. You had people on YTBC, and it's part of them moving goalposts when it comes to Canelo, right? But they were telling you, they're trying to sell you on the fact that they were trying to sell you on Charlo 164. That's the funniest part right there. Errol Spence at 164 catch weight. They really wanted to serve Errol Spence up at 164 for Canelo. That's hilarious. That's still, like, every time I bring that up, every time I say Canelo versus Errol Spence at 164, it just makes me laugh. But they wanted you to believe that 160 Charlo, who had been almost a year inactive at that point, didn't look good in his last fight. 164 Errol Spence, and then Benavidez on the back end was a tougher deal than Bivol on the front end. And then the Golovkin rematch, which we had no idea how that third fight was going to go. Golovkin did look old in that fight. But they wanted you to believe that that was a tougher deal. So it brings me to this point, like, you ask yourself, why did he take that deal instead? One, he's more comfortable dealing with Trust Fund Eddie and Matchroom. He's got a relationship with them. Also, I have to assume at this point that Canelo is trustworthy, that he's going to get his money in time from Trust Fund Eddie and Matchroom. Let's go back to Bud Crawford. After Errol Spence Jr., the fight falls through and he announces he's going to fight Evan. He goes on Instagram Live, 15-minute video as to why he didn't take the Errol Spence fight and he's going to fight Evan. What did Bud Crawford say? Like, this was the one that really stuck out to me. This was the quote that really stuck out to me. He said, I have PBC fighters reaching out to me in the back channels telling me do not trust what you're being told. Like, you start to do that math in your head, do the algorithm, like do the addition in your head. You have fighters like Deontay Wilder. I'm hearing there's legs to this. Being frustrated with PBC, not getting his money on time. You hear fighters getting frustrated when not getting dates, but they have clauses in their contract that they cannot speak out against these things publicly. And you have fighters reaching out to Terence Crawford. He can't name those names, but he's telling you on his Instagram Live, I have fighters from PBC reaching out to me and saying, do not trust what you're being told with this contract. We have dealings with this company. We're not getting our money on time. And then another litmus test, you had the PBC fanboys saying not all money is good money. Not all money is good money, right? If you go over here, deal with PBC, PBC is PBC. If you go over here with BLK Prime, you're not going to get your money. There's no way he's going to get $10 million. No way. No way. It's not going to happen. What happens? $5 million deposit 2 weeks before the fight. 1 week before the fight, another $5 million deposit. The $10 million hits his bank account before the fight. So when I see this comment right here, is Canelo one of those fighters that's being told behind closed doors by other PBC fighters, look, the Plant fight was supposed to happen when? It was supposed to happen in September. That was supposed to be Mexican Independence Day weekend. When was it? It was in November. Why was it backed up 3 months or 2 months plus? Why? Because Al Haymon was trying to strong-arm Canelo into a longer-term deal to get the fight. He was using Plant as leverage to get Canelo in the door for a longer amount of time. But the point is, it backed up the fight. Al Haymon with no leverage in the situation besides Caleb Plant having that last golden ticket for Undisputed. That was his only leverage. He would not budge. And it brings me to my point. When we talk about fighters crossing the street, it only seems to be an issue when it's PBC fighters. Expectations, right? The expectations aren't for the PBC fighters to cross the street. The expectations are for other fighters, even the cash cow of boxing. Even the biggest name in boxing, the only dude who's going to get a Super Bowl commercial, he has to cross the street to get the Caleb Plant fight, or he's not getting it. You could give him $50 million, Caleb Plant him. It doesn't matter that he's that much of the A side. He's still got to cross the street to fight Al Haymon's fighter. Like, if you're Caleb Plant sitting there in that situation and you know you're being used as leverage to try to get this guy in the door for a longer term deal, and all you want is an undisputed fight. All you want is the biggest fight in boxing. And eventually Al Haymon landed it for him, but you're sitting there and you're like, man, like, I just want the fight. I just want the fight. But this is another one of those issues that it's hard to talk about, because anytime you talk about Al Haymon or an Al Haymon fighter, the PBC fanboys come at you with everything. They're like the Beyonce fans, dude. Like, I'm telling you, like Taylor Swift. You ever talk like negative about Beyonce or Taylor Swift in front of one of their fans? It's ugly. Like, they will, all resources, they're going to send all resources to destroy you. They call it the Beehive or whatever, Beyonce's fans. That's the same thing with Al Haymon's fans. And Al Haymon has plenty of fans, and they're deranged. They're extreme. When I say something negative about a top-ranked fighter, I could talk about Tyson Fury. I could talk negative about some things that Trust Fund Eddie has done, Oscar, him doing some stuff and then getting fake abs. I can talk about all this stuff. And I don't get much pushback. And a lot of the pushback I get, to be quite honest, is fair. Even the guys who are trolling are funny. But the PBC stands, the PBC fanboys, when I say something negative about Al or one of his fighters, particularly a big name fighter in his stable, boy, they come after me. They're like Beyonce and Taylor Swift's fan base. I'm telling you. I bet Bud's PBC source was probably Broner. I mean, it could have been. I don't know who it was. He said multiple fighters. So he had multiple PBC fighters telling him, make sure you dot your I's, cross your T's on this contract. Make sure you have lawyers looking at every little thing here, because so I'm just telling you, there's going to come a point in time. The reckoning is coming. Like there's going to come a point in time when these LDBC channels who come after you big time when you talk negatively about Al Heyman or one of his fighters, the PBC fanboys, there's going to come a point in time when they have to start choosing between their favorite fighters and their favorite advisor. Even more so than they're doing now. And there's going to come a point in time when it becomes so bad that they're going to have to throw Al under the bus. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. And that is going to be like, I'm going to have a front row seat. I'm going to have my popcorn ready. And I'm going to be laughing because it will be hilarious. That reckoning is coming. Don't doubt me on that. Fair criticism isn't biased. Hateful criticism is. That's right. You got retaliation from the PBC fanboys for the, yes, I did. The 600-day anniversary video. Yes, I did. Some of those guys on YouTube out here thinking the fridge and get a few beers out. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it brings me back to, like, we're talking about Canelo, John Ryder, why that's a fair fight, why John Ryder is a good opponent, and why they're going to criticize anything that Canelo does, no matter what. They just are. And their expectations are so high of him that he could come out and say, I'm going to fight a top 4 to 6 guy in my weight class, and I'm going to fight the best fighter in the weight class north of me in a rematch. And it's still not going to be good enough, as some of their favorite fighters don't have anything scheduled at all. That's the expectation we talk about. But we're fair over here. Like a week or two ago, when Teofimo Lopez was saying, I'm not going to fight Regis Prograis, I got other things I want to do. We were saying, dude, come on. Come on. What else could it be that's bigger than Regis Prograis? Everybody else seems busy. Why not fight for the title? You've been saying you want to be a champion. Everybody's ducking Regis Prograis. But what happens? What's the difference between what Teofimo Lopez is doing and Jose Ramirez? What's the difference? Jose Ramirez, like people say we throw out the term, boxing fans throw out the term duck too much. So I want to be specific on what I think a duck is. If you don't fight a fighter in a meaningful fight, whether it be for a title, be for a good bit amount of money, whatever it is, and you fight someone lesser than that fighter. Jose Ramirez is a perfect example of this. Doesn't fight Regis Prograis, throws out every excuse in the book for why he can't fight him. And then what happens? He fights Richard Comey after saying he's not going to fight Richard Comey. What's the difference between that and Teofimo Lopez? What is Teofimo Lopez doing here? It sounds like anyway. He's going to fight Josh Taylor in the UK. Josh Taylor, whether we think he won that fight or not, beat Regis Prograis. Whether he beat Canelo'S last year or not, he beats Regis Prograis. So Teofimo Lopez is not fighting Regis Prograis. We didn't like that part at the time. But what does it look like is happening? He's going to go over to the UK on the road and fight the number one guy in the division for a belt. Not a duck. It's not a duck. And that's how we can be honest and change our stance. A week or two ago, I was thinking, this looks like a duck to me for Teofimo Lopez, but I'm here admitting I was wrong about that if this plays out the way it sounds like it's going to play out. If Teofimo Lopez goes to Scotland to fight Josh Taylor for a belt at 140 and goes straight for the number one guy in his third fight in the weight class, even after looking not so good in his first two fights in the weight class, that is a big boy move. Win or lose, he gets my respect for that. Good for him. Not a duck. We can properly put things in perspective. We don't pick and choose who we want to go after, who we want to leave alone. There's nothing in it for me to say Teofimo Lopez is doing a great job if he goes over there. There's nothing in it for me, but it's just the truth. Good for him. And that's the difference between a duck and not a duck. You want specific definitions, you want specific explanations, that's it. He's not fighting this fight, and he's going for a bigger fight, likely for more money. It aligns for him both competition and business-wise. It aligns for us as boxing fans because Josh Taylor versus Teofimo Lopez is an entertaining fight on paper, and it's a meaningful fight as well. It aligns with us as boxing fans. And when it aligns for the fighters and the boxing fans alike, those are the fights we want made in boxing. And by the way, if Regis Prograis and Jack Catterall, we spoke about this with Zach Parker and John Ryder last year, right? Zach Parker can't get the fight with Boo Boo Andre because Boo Boo Andre is running for the hills. John Ryder can't get the fight with Canelo because Canelo's injured, going to surgery. They fight each other. So if Regis Prograis isn't getting the fight with Teofimo Lopez or whoever, Teofimo Lopez, Jose Ramirez, and Jack Catterall cannot get this rematch with Josh Taylor, whether we think he deserves it or not, it looks snake bitten. It looks like a fight that's been cursed by the boxing gods. Fight each other. Regis Prograis and Jack Catterall fight each other in a meaningful fight. If we look at the rankings at 140 in the big publications, it's Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis, Jack Catterall. It's the top three. In no particular order, that's the top three. So for Regis Prograis, if you're number two, go fight number three. Go fight number three. Fight each other, get the fight made, get it made as soon as possible. What do we talk about with Boots Ennis? What Paul Williams had to do is stay active. Stay active. Gennady Golovkin had to do it. He couldn't get the fights he wanted at middleweight. He had to stay active against the best opposition available to him. He couldn't just sit back and wait for the fights to fall in his lap. He had to get busy. He had to get active. He had to mow guys down. And that's what Regis Prograis needs to be doing at 140. He needs to look around and say, look, I need to be realistic here. Realistic. These other fighters are not going to come to me even with the belt. I thought once I got the belt, things were going to change. Things are not changing. So what I need to do, I need to get with Pro Bellum, get me active, dude. I don't care who it's against. Get me the dates. I need to be fighting 3 or 4 times in 2023. That has to be the game plan with Regis Prograis. I need to be fighting. Even if it's not against the guys I want, I have a limited amount of time here. We do not stay in our prime for 10, 15 years. The window will be closing soon. I'm in my 30s now. I need to be getting these fights. The only way I'm going to get a big fight is if I keep fighting, keep knocking guys out, build a fan base, try to unify, and then build my name that way. That's the only way. It's the only way. So Regis Prograis versus Jack Catterall has to happen. It does. But I mean, once again, like, I just want to touch on this again. Let me get Regis wants all the smoke. That he does. 600-day Charlo not getting stripped is fair criticism, not hatred. That's right. That's right. And that's easy. Like sanctioning bodies, like you can't allow a dude to sit on a belt for 600 plus days. And that's another part of the expectations we talk about. It's like, oh, Jamal Charlo, he has mental health issues. You look at the top 10 to 15 rankings in every sanctioning body at middleweight. You have dudes in those rankings that have all kind of issues, living paycheck to paycheck. Boxing might not even be their main job, their career. They're trying to build themselves up until they can quit their job to become a full-time fighter. They may have mental health issues. They may have family member dying, whatever it may be. We can't hold up a whole division because a dude is sitting on a belt for 600 days, and we prioritize his problems above everybody else's at middleweight because he may have mental health issues or whatever it may be. And then when he does come back, he gets to fight for his belt that he shouldn't have still. And he'll likely do it against an inferior opponent. Expectations. So, I mean, just to recap the expectations thing, Canelo Alvarez is fighting John Ryder, who is the only 168-pounder who had 2 wins in 2022 against top 10 168-pounders. The only super middleweight to have 2 top 10 wins at super middleweight in 2022. The only one. Number 3 contender, according to Ring Magazine. Number 6 overall, according to BadLeftHook.com. In a division that's supposedly strong, right? But somehow, the guy who was the number 3 contender, somewhere between number 4 and number 6 in the division, is a Eurobum. It's amazing. It's amazing how you can do that mental gymnastics and get away with it. Incredible. Incredible. And by the way, you're doing it coming off of surgery. This is your first fight in your home country in 12 years. American fighters don't know how good they have it. Your first fight in your home country in 12 years. And oh, by the way, the guy you're fighting beat the guy who Boo Boo Andre was running for the hills from. Running for the hills from in 2022. And I'm supposed to be crying because Boo Boo Andre didn't get this shot. And Jamal Charlo, who doesn't even care enough about us to fight for the past 2 years, you think he deserves this fight over him. And David Benavidez, who lost his belt on the scale, the belt that Caleb Plant picked up and turned that into $10 million to fight Canelo Alvarez. You expect me to feel bad for these fighters for not getting the shot at Canelo over the dude who has meaningful wins in 2022. Not going to do it. Not going to do it. Especially when this dude not only has this fight lined up against the top 5 super middleweight, but he has another fight already lined up for September against the number 1 guy in the weight class north of him and a guy who is a top 5 to 10 pound for pound fighter in the world in a fight that he already lost in one-sided fashion. Not going to do it, man. They want you to throw Canelo under the bus. That's what they want you to do. It's not happening here. And this isn't just something that I picked up. Like I said, I didn't like Canelo 12 years ago, 15 years ago, when he's fighting Carlos Baldomir, when he's fighting Matthew Hatton at 154, belt at 154. But over time, he starts to build that organic relationship with you by behaving a certain way as a fighter, giving you tough fights, giving you top fights, win or lose, and behaving in that same manner for a long, extended period of time. And oh, by the way, he's great for boxing. Rising tide lifts all ships. I hate to see what this sport would be right now if Canelo Alvarez wasn't a part of it. I'm just telling you. So if they want us to throw Canelo under the bus, I'll tell you what, go to hell. It's not happening here. It's not happening here. It ain't happening. And that ain't about clicks, none of it. It ain't happening. We're going to stay true to ourselves over here. We're going to continue to support the fighters that give us what we want as boxing fans. We're not going to criticize fighters just because you want us to criticize certain fighters. We're not going to do it. We're not going to become fans of certain fighters just because it's good. It's convenient for us to like that fighter because it makes the another fighter look bad. It's not going to happen, because that's the only reason that I can see at this point that you dudes are still fans of Jamal Charlo, Boo Boo Andre, etc. David Benavidez. What's keeping you there? I have to ask, like, what's keeping you there? Other than surface issue things, what's keeping you there? What's keeping you under the Jamal Charlo tent? Hasn't fought in 605 days. His fight in June is probably going to be a letdown of an opponent. I understand David Benavidez getting some momentum because he's going to fight Caleb Plant, but that's a fight that should have happened 3 to 5 years ago, if we're being honest. I feel like we had to drag these fighters to that. What's keeping you there? Seriously, this is the main one. Like, what's keeping you in Boo Boo Andre's fan base? Other than you may be from Rhode Island. I don't know. What's keeping you there? What's keeping you in the fan base of a dude who openly ducked Zach Parker twice and Janabek twice in the same year? I've never seen that, by the way. I've never seen a dude openly duck 2 fighters twice in the same calendar year. It's amazing. It's amazing. So if these dudes want me to throw Canelo under the bus, I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen until this dude starts behaving like the dude that we became a fan of. It's that organic fan base that's going to stay there. They can't understand it. I'm telling you. It's the new age boxing fans who came here through Floyd Mayweather, and they believe that you have to be undefeated to be a great fighter. If you lose, you're exposed, and that's it. If that's all that's keeping you there, I'm telling you, it's not good, because they're going to let you down. But they can't understand why Dimitri Bivol wins 9 to 10 rounds against this dude, if we're being real, and we're still here. They can't understand it. They can't understand how I could watch that and then travel to Las Vegas to watch him fight Golovkin 4 months later and spend thousands of dollars to do it. They can't understand it. I'm telling you, they're lost. They can't understand it. They can't see why you do it. They can't see organic fan bases. They can't see heart to heart. It's about more than the wins and losses. Like, these fighters, man, how many of them